Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabrielle and I'm a tax manager at one of the big four accounting firms. And today I thought I would walk through you guys of what my typical day might look like and what I do as a tax accountant. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on what I do, I've actually recently moved to a new tax group. I was in Canadian corporate tax, but now I'm in US international tax. And I have to say that the work is very different as well as the type of clients that you deal with. I would definitely say that US/international clients are a lot more demanding just because there's a lot more going on, as well as their files are a lot more complicated. So I definitely feel that there's less of a work-life balance than what my previous role was in Canadian corporate tax. Depending on whether you are in US tax or Canadian tax, your busy seasons might be different just because the tax return deadlines are different. I'll share with you guys over here what the busy seasons are depending on the tax return deadlines. So depending on what time of the year it is and what busy season you're into, the type of work that you focus on might be primarily on one certain type of return, such as corporate tax returns or partnership returns, or if you're at the beginning of the year from maybe January to March, you might be solely focused on tax provisions. Your days may also look quite different because certain days you might have a lot of back-to-back meetings and you might not have a chance to really focus on the different files that you have. And other days you might have no meetings, and so you could really get most of your work done and just make progress on the review or the tax provision that you've been holding off. Before, when you were at the office, some of your time during the day might be spent on collaborating with other people. Now that the situation has changed and we're working from home, you would have just a lot of online meetings that might be back to back, which could be more efficient, but it might also be a little bit more difficult when everyone's looking at one file and trying to understand, because there's just some limitations with online presence. Though generally I would say you have about 20 to 25% of your time spent on meetings, whether that is client work, collaborating with your peers or your juniors or your seniors, or even just like L&D meetings in general. And a good 70 to 75% of your time would be spent on actually doing the work. So whether that's reviewing tax returns, etc. If I were to give you what your average year might look like and how your time is split across the different priorities, I would say the first big chunk of your year will be spent on working on tax returns. So as a manager, I would say 50% of your time will be spent on anything related to tax returns, whether that is giving directions to your juniors or reviewing the tax return or just project management in general. And that is just coordinating with your juniors and your seniors, such as your director, the partner, for their review, as well as being that main client contact and being the person who asks the client questions and following up with anything that's missing related to the tax returns. So I would say a big chunk of your time as a tax consultant is spent on doing tax returns. The second bigger chunk of your time will be spent on doing tax consulting work and tax provision work. So I would allocate around 15% to tax consulting work, and that may vary related to different transactions that might happen during the year. I would say that tax consulting work, whether it's related to M&A, internal restructuring, or just tax planning in general for your client, is a lot more interesting and a lot more fun, just because there is a lot more flexibility in how you get to kind of organize and present to the client. Most of the time, the tax consulting work is presented to the client in PowerPoint or a memo format, and most of the work involved requires you to do a lot of research and a lot of kind of brainstorming on what the best options are for the client. So applying the client facts to the research that you've done, and then finally calculating what the tax implications are. So it requires a bit of creativity, and I would say that's a lot more fun because you kind of have more flexibility in terms of what you come up and present to the client. Another big chunk of your year might also be involved with tax provisions, and personally for me, I'm not like a huge fan of tax provisions. I don't really think they're that much fun, but there are definitely a need for tax provision as a tax consultant because a lot of big companies require tax provision amounts on their financial statements that is related to your current income tax or your deferred income tax. And this type of work really requires a good solid understanding of both tax and accounting. And for me, it was really hard to sort of get into this in the beginning, but after a while, if you really understand the concepts, it's a fundamental skill that a tax consultant should have. And most of the time, the work involved with reviewing a tax provision is you work closely with the audit team since they're the ones who are organizing and managing a review of the financial statements. But basically, you receive working papers from the client and you go through them and you review whether it's reasonable based on a certain threshold or materiality that is provided to you by the audit team. The remaining smaller chunks of your time throughout the year is spent on L&D, which I would say is around 10% of your time. And there is a lot of L&D going on as a tax consultant because there are always changes going on to tax law, and it's one of your main priorities to keep up to date to all these changes. Also, there are a lot of changes going on internally, and like for my firm, there are a lot of like technology changes going on and how it's improving work processes. There's also like administrative changes to the firm. So there's a lot of L&D going on, which you should be on top of just so that you could perform and do your work efficiently. You also spend some time on coaching. I would say this is around 5% of your time. And as a manager, you have both a coach who is there to kind of support you along with your career and just be there for any questions you might have. Also, you will have coachees. So usually they're, juniors who've just entered the firm, and you're assigned to them to also give them support and to answer any questions that they have while they grow their career within the firm. Another important aspect of the coaching relationship is that you will be represented, or you'll be representing your coachees at performance evaluation meetings. And so it's really important to be up to date and maintain that relationship with your coach or your coachee so that they could accurately reflect your performance at these performance evaluation meetings. Last but not least, another 5% of your time is spent on file management. And this, I would say, is my least favorite because I associate it with more administrative tasks. As accountants working in public practice, your time is what gets billed to the client. So it's important to keep on top of your time and how much time is spent on certain projects. And that actually requires, a bit of work just to track and to report your time. Another big thing is billing. So as a manager, you keep track of WIP, which is work in progress. And at the end of the month, you ensure that you bill the client so that the firm gets paid for the work that the firm has provided. Other administrative tasks might be related to just staffing in general and ensuring all your projects are properly staffed so you don't run into the issue of come time when you're trying to do a project and there's nobody booked on that file, and by that time everybody has been booked and there's no capacity. You don't want to be running into that issue, so just planning ahead and making sure all your files are properly staffed. And last but not least, just the time it takes to filter through your emails, because you do have a million emails every morning, and just kind of sorting through them to see which ones are priority, which ones are less important, and stuff like that. Also, as you get more senior within the firm, a lot of your time is spent less on doing more of the technical review of files and more towards business development, which could be anything from client relationship building to trying to get more work or new work to really kind of add to the revenue stream of the firm. And that's actually essentially what partners do at firms. They're more about business development and getting work rather than the actual work itself. So that was a summary of what a typical day of a tax manager might look like, or what a tax accountant does on a daily basis. A job in public practice definitely requires a strong sense of time management and ability to kind of juggle different priorities, as well as ability to perform under pressure. And if you enjoy working in a fast-paced environment where you're always learning and trying something different, then public practice might be the career for you, and it could be very rewarding depending on what your interests and your personality is. Anyways, I hope that you found my video useful today and that it gave you an idea of what a day in a tax accountant might look like if that's something that you're considering. And if it was helpful, it would really mean a lot to me if you guys could hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button so that I could post more videos like this in the future. Also, feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions, because I do read every single one of them and I do try my best to respond to every single one of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!